Meet Rebecca. Tired of trying to find love in Hamilton, Rebecca decides to join The Bachelor in hopes of finding the love of her life. Things are going great, she falls in love, the Bachelor proposes, and she knows that they're gonna live happily ever after. Or not. They actually break up once the show ends. This doesn't really come as a surprise, it's quite commonly seen in all of these reality TV shows, so statistically, these couples just don't last once the cameras stop rolling. For example, only 4 couples are still together from 26 seasons of The Bachelor. That's a 15% success rate. So why is it that these couples seemingly fall in love so easily, and why don't they last in the real world? Physical attractiveness is an important factor of attraction to consider here. So picture this, Rebecca walks in on the first day of filming, sees The Bachelor and thinks he's the most handsome man that she's ever seen. She then automatically assumes that he must be so intelligent and seem so kind. This is known as the halo effect, which is our tendency to attribute positive characteristics to people that we've already formed positive impressions of. This involves using physical attractiveness as an indicator of other positive characteristics based on this presumption we have that what is beautiful is also good. So, on reality TV shows where contestants are typically exceptionally good looking, they're often fall victim to this halo effect, and it seems like love at first sight. But here's the issue. Reality TV shows don't really mimic real life, and they also don't film for very long. For example, Too Hot to Handle films for about 3 weeks, The Bachelor films for about 6 to 8 weeks, but you're competing for time with other contestants. Basically, there isn't a lot of time or opportunity for them to really get to know their partner and their true traits. So, what happens when they go back to the real world? They spend more time getting to know them. Well, that metaphorical halo kind of disappears. This might help explain why couples break up once they go back to the real world, because they can no longer just assume positive characteristics based on attractiveness. And they might not like what they discover. Another factor to consider here is proximity. So we are attracted to people who are in close proximity to us, and this is based on both physical distance and functional distance. So physical distance has to do with how physically close you are to someone, regardless of whether you interact with them or not. So these 2 contestants have low physical distance between them because they are nearby even if they've never spoken or interacted with one another. Functional distance now has to do with how often you actually interact. So these contestants now, along with low physical distance, also have low functional distance because they are regularly talking and communicating with one another. On reality TV shows where you typically share the same spaces or even live together, and you're also interacting, you have both low physical and low functional distance, which could explain why they feel that quick and easy attraction towards one another. But what happens when the show ends and they go back to their different hometowns that are far away? Well, they might maintain that low functional distance if they continue communicating virtually, for example, texting or FaceTiming. The physical distance between them is now high. And proximity effect states that you experience most attraction when both physical and functional distance is low. This might help explain why they break up, not necessarily because they lose that attraction, but probably because it can't develop as much as it would have if they maintain that nearby physical proximity to one another. Finally, there's something called misattribution of arousal, which is the idea that you can mistake the cause of your arousal and attribute it as sexual attraction to someone, or just attraction in general. So this starts with a stimulus that causes some form of arousal. In this case, arousal can relate to anxiety, fear responses, anything that involves adrenaline. So for example, a racing heart or shaky breathing. So being on a roller coaster is often thought of as an arousal-inducing event, and this is because it causes that adrenaline rush and that arousal that goes along with it, which can then be misattributed as attraction to the person next to you on a roller coaster. So how does this relate to reality TV? Well, imagine you're Rebecca. There's lights and cameras and microphones on you at all times. The world is about to watch your every action. If you say the wrong thing, your life could be ruined. Do you feel that anxiety? Is your heart racing? That's arousal. That arousal that she feels can then be misattributed as attraction towards the Bachelor, who she's feeling those responses around. On top of that, reality TV couples typically get to go on these thrilling adventures. They go skydiving or bungee jumping or visit amusement parks. That can further their attraction towards each other or the potential for that misattribution of arousal to occur. So what happens when they're no longer filming, they're no longer doing those thrilling adventures, and they're in the real world? Well, that arousal also goes away, and then there's nothing really for them to misattribute as attraction, which could explain why they break up once the show ends. So why should you care about anything I just said? While specifically, this explains why you shouldn't sit around at home moping about why these reality TV couples are finding love and you aren't, considering they have factors set up for maximal attraction and they're also much more likely to experience that misattribution that we talked about. But more broadly, this can be explained in a variety of different factors involving attraction. So for example, should you really match with that person on Tinder who lives 100 kilometers away? Are you really in love with that person who took you on a coffee date, or is your heart just racing from the caffeine? And are you actually convinced that that hot celebrity is the nicest person to walk the earth? You can try to tackle all these questions using your newfound knowledge. Thank you for listening.